Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director, for the presentation, and appreciate the hospitality for being a guest counselor tonight. One of the questions that I get emailed about a lot, and I think most counselors are sent on those, and they're definitely part of like an email campaign because they all seem to be pretty consistent in their language, but they talk about the adoption policies. Specifically, they label it as open adoption policies, and you don't have to get into like specific instances with staff or anything, but it seems like most of the time they say that there's been like 2 employees that were let go or terminated, or there was some kind of punishment there because they tried to stop adoptions from happening to people that maybe wouldn't have passed a background check, or people who wouldn't have necessarily been permitted to have animals. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I will speak to as much as I can with personnel issues. The issue was not simply, it boiled down to not following policies and procedures, and there were other aspects to that. The focus has been on the fact that one of the issues was not following procedures. We had open adoptions is something that is popular nationwide in shelters, and it basically boils down to treating an individual as an individual, a potential adopter as an individual, and not rigidly sticking to rules that automatically just deny, but instead having conversations, and it's accomplished in a number of ways, but it's aimed at removing and reducing barriers both to the animals and to the public to adopt. That can be done in a number of ways. For us now, it is primarily, instead of people coming in the door and have to sit down and fill out an application and go through an interrogation before they even look at animals, we've stopped that. So that's reducing a barrier. One of the policies that was in place and it only developed in the last, I think, couple of years at ICS, was the use of Mycase and performing a type of criminal background check in that sense before allowing a person to adopt. That included, as you're familiar, Mycase is not going to show just animal-related offenses, which is, for the most part what we should be looking at, but it shows a lot of information, some of which may or may not have been, true or was in the process. What we found is that that opened up the door for a lot of prejudices and biases and judgment on individuals for items that were not related to owning pets. We saw staff using it, and despite specifics that were in place, specific procedures that were in place, using it because they didn't like the way a person's shoes looked. They had an accent. They didn't have a car. And so it became very difficult to regulate that and prevent that bias from coming in and stepping in. And then obviously not giving people, a benefit of the doubt, or, recognizing that we all make mistakes and that we learn from that. And so what we did was, instead of focusing on using that as a means of trying to weed through applicants, is we focused on using our own in-house system, as shelters do across the country, that we use our database that includes, because we are animal control, so that includes the database that we have of every call that we've received, every animal that we've gone out and assisted, every animal that's come in and who they came in with, and we use that instead to try to determine whether the individual in front of us was someone that we would adopt an animal to. And so open adoptions is just more about removing those barriers in different ways, and different shelters do it in different ways, and just having those conversations and treating people as individuals.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we definitely want to have a low barrier for people to be able to adopt animals, but just to confirm, if someone does have a history of animal abuse, or there's probably studies whether or not like domestic violence should be included in that or not, but if someone does have a history of animal abuse, does that show up on your database even if maybe animal control is always involved in every situation, but if maybe just IMPD responded and handled the situation, does that still show up on your
As long
database?
as we have some type of, call was put in, whether through the MAC line, or sometimes, people email, or council members will email us, and we will create a ticket. That all goes into our system, so we have that historical information to
Do
you.
police reports?
That's a good question. I would have to ask about that. I don't.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
believe anytime that we are called out to assist, that would definitely be in there.